This episode of Simple Civics EdTalks is sponsored by informedsc.org, South Carolina's most comprehensive and user-friendly nonpartisan data center for critical information about students, teachers, achievement, and funding for public education. Bringing together district and state-level data, informedsc.org is a one-stop shop for researchers and champions to advance knowledge and inform action. InformedSC.org is a special project of Public Education Partners, Greenville County. Greenville County Schools has an operating budget of nearly $1 billion, and understanding the complexity of what that budget represents in terms of the investments that it makes possible for students, teachers, and schools is essential for any champion of public education here in our community. I'm Catherine Schumacher with Public Education Partners, and on today's Simple Civics EdTalks, I'm joined by Nancy Fitzer, Assistant to the Superintendent and Liaison to the GCS Board of Trustees. We're going to dig into the proposed budget for the 2026-27 school year and highlight some of the good news it includes, all without a tax increase. Well, I'm very pleased to be here with my friend and colleague, Nancy Fitzer, who has such an interesting role at Greenville County Schools. And before we jump into talking about the fiscal 27 budget, as it's so far been presented, Nancy, why don't you talk a little bit about the way in which you connect with the Greenville County Schools Board of Trustees, not just for the budget process, but really just in general?
Yes, it's a very interesting role that I didn't know existed until I was applying for it, actually. So what I do is the Board of Trustees is elected. So they have constituents. They have constituent questions. It's a political role in that way in helping connect them and their constituents with resources at the district. I also serve as a conduit. They obviously they can speak with the superintendent anytime that they need to, and he maintains an open door with them. But for questions that aren't necessary for him to get involved in, I can, help do the research and do the legwork and just get them information. And I kind of serve as a sounding board.
It's a great expression.
Yeah, translate, educationese into English and help them get a full understanding when they have questions, and especially with some of our written materials, which I think we're going to get into, help make that understandable, not just to the board, but to the public, and help them be able to work with their constituents and convey that understanding.
Yeah, and explain the stuff that is a little more, as I would call it, crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the crunchier stuff. You've done a great job. You were responsible. I know you oversaw the new website for the trustees that was one project of yours. And I think it's such a fantastic portal for transparency purposes, because everything on there, whenever there's a meeting, I can pop in and look at the PowerPoints, and I can look at all the supporting materials. And that certainly was the case with all of these materials related to the fiscal 27 budget. Good. Well done.
Well, thank you for the plug. And yes, that is the goal, that it's a one-stop shop for any information related to the board, policies, meetings. We've got everything on there back to 2003.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually was curious. I wanted to go back and look at some budget things from last year for a recent presentation that I did, and I was able to, there was the PowerPoint document and all of the things. So I'm lucky because I know I can ping you often, and I often do. But just for everybody who's listening, I really encourage you, if you want to follow, and I encourage people to do that, just check out the trustee website. It's just, you can click to it through the regular Greenville County Schools website. All right. The reason for our chat today is it is budget season all over the place.
It's budget. Not spring. We don't have spring.
We don't have spring. We have
budget
season. The workshop for the Greenville County Schools fiscal 27 budget was a couple of weeks ago. We're recording this actually at the very end of April. And then the first reading will be the second Tuesday of May?
First Tuesday, May 5th.
May 5th. Oh, so next week. And so the intention is to post this right after that. So everything that we kind of talk about today in terms of actual hard numbers is a little subject to change, and we'll talk about why and how as we go through the conversation, but just want to put that caveat
Thank you.
at the top. So just from a big picture standpoint, Nancy, as we look at moving from fiscal 26, so that was the 25-26 academic year, to fiscal 27. So that's going to be the 26-27 fiscal year.
Mhm.
So starting on July
Mhm.
1st through June 30th. So July 1st of 26 through June 30th of 27. What are some of the big picture items? Like what's the big story? What's the big takeaway?
The big takeaway is we're investing in people,
Right.
and people are already 92% of the budget. So when we're spending on
Yep.
people. Keeping up with inflation, keeping up with a competitive marketplace, staying competitive with employment, recruiting and retaining employees is of the utmost importance when 92% of your budget is
Yeah.
people and
It's the people
we
business.
are in
Dr.
the people
Royster always
business.
says that.
Yes.
We are people teaching people.
So we're very excited that we really are going to be able to remain competitive with teacher pay. So at the workshop, there's a proposed $2,450 raise for
Yeah.
all teachers across the board. And that's in addition to the step increase that they get
Right.
automatically every year,
Right.
which is different from a lot of other industries. But they already would get a some pay raise
Sort of a
every year.
standard raise
Correct.
from year to year. Yep.
And then we're going to raise each step by 2450, and by first reading that could change.
Yep.
We're hoping to
Could go up,
potentially
could
change
go
it.
down,
Could go up, could
hopefully,
go
yeah,
down.
which is really great news. I think that's such a huge, we talk a lot about the fact that having high quality teachers in the classroom is so important in remaining competitive in that, particularly the teacher hiring marketplace, but really everywhere. And so this investment in people is really kind of across the board. And it looks like, when I did the back of the envelope math on the, sort of on the revenue side, there's basically, and this is really for the budget as a whole, it's about a 2.5% increase is sort of what we're looking at across the board, or
Yes, from bottom line
Mhm.
increases 2.5%,
Mhm.
but it's more for teachers.
More for teachers, right?
Mhm.
So that's
And
super
about
exciting.
3.25% for all other employees.
Yeah, and like getting to this point of sort of this growth from 26 to 27, this sort of strategic, careful, fiscally conservative growth. It's been a long
Mhm.
process, right? And I talked a little bit in another podcast with my friend GP McClear. We talked about sort of the state and the
Mhm.
count, the budget process down there, and then how that aligns with the district's process, which really starts back in the fall with principals submitting requests and different departments
Mhm.
submitting requests, and then there are almost 24 meetings, and then you have this sort of workshop, and that's when everyone sort of gets their eyes on this, and then we have the first reading of the budget in May, and then we'll have the second reading and approval in June. So that's
Correct.
basically the timeline of how everything works out. Cool. Well, so let's talk a little bit more about those strategic investments. So obviously, this teacher raise, sort of across all of the steps, and then adding another step. So even if you're up at the top of that career
Right.
ladder, you're going to get another step, which is great news for our
Mhm.
teachers.
We wanna keep those experienced teachers,
Yep,
yes.
yep, keeping the experienced teachers in. And then there's some other I was really heartened to see some of the other addition of staff. So talk a little bit about work that, investments that are being made on the substitute side, and then some other kind of support positions that are really designed to help all students succeed.
So with the substitutes, a couple years ago, we started allocating permanent
Which
subs
is
for
great. So
every
every school
school.
has a
So
permanent
they
sub on
basically have
staff.
one person who shows up every day, no matter what, and can fill in that first substitute,
The need.
that
Yep.
first vacancy. If there is if there is a rare day where there are no teachers absent, that person knows the school, knows the kids, can jump in and help and do anything that is needed at the school that day. So it's a huge asset, and the principals love them. So that has been a very popular ad and change, and it's really improved our obviously the stability when the substitutes know the kids and the kids know the subs, and much more helpful in filling those sub vacancies. So then we looked at that was one thing that principals requested were more permanent subs that came out of the principal budget process. Well, it would be quite expensive
Sure.
to add another one at every school, and then we looked at the need and what are the fill rates at the different schools? Who's got the most unfilled vacancies? And when we're talking about unfilled vacancies, that means that the kids in the class, there's no substitute teacher available, so somebody from the office needs to fill in. They have to split up the kids. They have to get a teacher to give up their planning period. So it's a lot of strain on the faculty, and also it's not ideal for the students, of course. So we looked at the schools that had the 15 highest rates of unfilled sub days. And those are the ones that are getting
An
an extra
additional
sub.
sub, which is really cool. And that's such a great example of data-driven decision making and not just sort of jumping and saying, all right, well, let's put one everywhere. It's being really strategic. And again, like conservative and thoughtful. Where is the need
Where's
highest?
the need? And coupled with that, there's a no cost approach that we're taking is looking at, well, what are some schools doing that they're having less trouble
Yeah.
getting subs than other schools? And how do we share that out and help maybe schools that are struggling a little more to fill their sub? What can they do to make subs feel more welcome
Yep.
and more a part of the community of that school and feel supported?
And are you is there a raise? Is there a substitute raise in this budget?
There is a
Yep.
substitute raise in this budget.
So that helps too.
It's about $1 an hour,
Yeah.
but that adds up. I mean,
Sure.
it's actually, a pretty decent percent
Yeah.
increase.
I remember hearing from teachers, I can't remember what group of teachers, but they were talking about the challenge of substitutes. And so I think
Mhm.
even just, that's the sort of stuff I sometimes hear anecdotally. And I think this is a really, really
Mhm.
wonderful, wonderful investment. So the
Yes,
other
a
thing,
6% increase. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, which
Mhm.
is, substantial.
Mhm.
So talk about, obviously, a lot of folks in the community are talking about the mental health crisis children are facing now and
Mhm.
mental health supports
Mhm.
and behavior and the challenges of behavior and discipline in our schools. That's
Absolutely.
another really strategic investment that I've seen in this budget. So talk a little bit
Correct.
about again, the decision making behind that and what that investment looks like on the expense side.
Sure. So with the mental health counselors, we have been working over a couple of years. So we used to have, when we first got mental health counselors in the schools, they came from the Department of Mental
Right.
Health. And that was great. That was a way to get mental health counselors into the schools. Then, as we moved on with that program, we realized it would make more sense and be more efficient if we actually employed those mental health counselors in-house. So we've been transitioning over a period of years with we're still using some that
Right.
are from Department of Mental Health and others that we are employing ourselves. And this year's budget includes absorbing some that had been funded by a grant previously, and that's just
Yep.
going into the general fund
Which is
budget.
great.
Mhm.
Which is good because
So we want to make sure that all students have access to mental health services who need that.
yeah, which is so important. And then kind of coupled with that is an investment in sort of behavior specialists and behavior aides
Correct.
and I don't know if liaison, they might have a different title, advisors or
Yes, there's
different
behavior
levels.
support liaison and behavior specialist.
It's just depending on training and where they
Inside
are
baseball
and
lingo, but yes,
yeah.
it's based on education level and
Yeah.
training.
And the idea for those positions is that they help, particularly with the children that are just really struggling with behavior and to sort of help. Is that sort of what they do? And so that the
Correct.
principal's time isn't spent necessarily like focusing on that. It kind of provides another layer
Well,
of
and they
support for
assist
administration.
teachers and they will help provide training. They will work with students, but that is an issue that has come up through teachers. Teachers give input into the budget as well.
Yeah.
Want to make sure everybody knows that, as well as the principals that they just need more help. There are
Right.
more severe behaviors going on, and that's
Challenges
not just Greenville. That is
everywhere.
nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're lucky that we're going to have some resources to be able to invest in that because it
correct.
can
We're
make a
very
huge
excited about
difference in
that.
school culture and teacher retention too. So
Correct.
And then finally, I think the other one that obviously has gotten a lot of attention is special education.
Yes.
And the Greenville and the district I know went through a very intentional process, having conversations around special education support for students with disabilities. And then there are specific investments in this budget that are responding to some of those recommendations and just generally part of the commitment that the district is making to special education. So what are some of the changes in the budget on an additional investments this year?
We are adding special education aides, 10 of them. We're adding four special education specialists who are the people who really kind of coach special education teachers and
Yeah.
work are the contact points for schools. So the ones that we have are not spread as thin. We're adding, a school psychologist, we're adding an OT, and we're increasing pay for special education aides,
Which is great.
which is great. So the minimum starting pay for an aide is going up to $20 an hour,
Great.
which is really great, and especially considering what it was really just a few
Yeah.
years ago, and in and also increasing for special ed aid substitutes.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
So the special education aid subs are going to be making basically what a non-certified teacher sub.
Just those. I was so happy. So as I always joke, I'm probably the only non-district person that sits in on that budget workshop. I'm a nerd about this thing. Listeners know that this stuff. So I was so excited to hear that we had capacity to do these kind of strategic investments in the budget this year. And so obviously, how are we paying for that, right? The bottom line is it looks like we are going to be able to do this without a millage increase. As of right now, again, this could all change based on what happens at the first reading, but and that's fantastic news. So can we talk just briefly sort of about on the revenue side? We have talked on this podcast before about the challenges of making the math for local school districts because of the weird way that we fund public education here in South Carolina.
Yes.
Largely, listeners will have heard, hopefully, you've heard the podcast we did about Act 388, and that there was essentially, a tax swap where the owner occupied houses, the property taxes for that no longer pay for school operations. They are subbed it out with a sales tax, which is very unpredictable and not adequate to meet the needs of growth and all sorts of things. So,
Correct.
the bottom line is that since Act 388 was put in place, Greenville County Schools alone, it has cost $673 million in revenues that would have otherwise come through the district. But let's talk a little bit about, some of the revenue, like how we're getting some additional revenue to help us meet these new investments.
The budget, the revenues, projected revenues are really only just under 2.5% higher than they were
Right.
last year, but we are realizing some significant savings. So folks may have heard about enrollment going down this year, and we are predicted to go down a bit next year as well. So we have formula-based allocation of personnel, which,
Speaking about
essentially, yeah, starting
mathing.
with mathing.
Yes.
I mean, so you have to have one principal per school.
Right. Right.
But, we have a certain number of teachers per student. We have a certain number of custodians per square foot.
Right.
So there are, I think, 135 teacher positions and administrative positions, other media specialist clerks, lab managers, essentially that we will not have next year that we had
Creating
this
a little bit
year,
of space
which is
in the budget. There's some
creating
savings that we're investing in these other positions that we do need.
correct
Yeah.
and in the raises.
Yeah.
So 15.5 million dollars will be saved. And I also want to emphasize that no one is losing their job.
Right.
So there are FTEs that are not going to be allocated, but we have turnover, every year.
Yeah.
There are people who retire, there are people who move. So we are shifting. So we're just absorbing.
Yeah. So things are
those.
people might be getting moved around.
Some
and
folks have had to
things.
move.
Yeah.
We'll have to move, but for the most part, we're just able to absorb those changes through attrition.
And I feel like, honestly, that is really, that's good news to be able to absorb those savings and then put them in place and sort of invest those savings in these other strategic areas.
Correct.
Given the growth that Greenville's experienced, over the last however many years. I do think, a couple things on the revenue side that just to point out to listeners, there's been some real changes in how those monies are allocated to regular districts and to charter schools. There's a whole new formula. Career and technical education has been reallocated in different ways. We're going to do at Public Education Partners a whole kind of white paper about this on our Inform Ed website that people will be able to dig into so
That
they
would
can
be
kind of
great.
and if people are really curious about it, it's it's interesting for those of us who are really, really follow the finances of public education
Yes.
closely.
And, the short version of that is that we took some hits this year based on a new formula that thankfully the state took our feedback and the feedback of other districts and has made some tweaks to it that are more beneficial to us this year.
And then, just looking ahead, some changes that to keep an eye on. There's been, boat tax. While the house that you live in is not taxed for school operations, if you have a boat, your boat has been taxed or your car. Those are the sorts of taxes that pay for operations.
Right.
And the state did just pass a boat tax cut that is, it's not a huge impact, but it is going to have an impact.
Well, I think our estimate, these are projections
Yeah, and they'll
because the
get moved
revenues
over.
come in
Mhm.
over the course of the year is about $160,000 for this year. So
Yep.
it's not for the coming year,
Right.
FY27.
Right.
But by 2029, it's
Yep.
going to be close to $1 million.
Yeah. And that's
So
the thing.
that's pretty significant.
Yeah. So I think that's one area. Obviously, County Council has made changes on the fee in lieu of taxes.
Correct.
So that has started for any new FELOs that come on board. The county is going to keep 80% of the money from those fee in lieu of tax agreements, which is a significant
It's a
change
significant
for the
change. And
district.
again, so this year, we're projecting that we're about, I think, $1.1 million less in FELO revenues than we did the previous year. And that's going to that number is going to get larger
grow and grow.
each year
Yeah.
as old agreements expire and the new ones are not going to be
Right.
coming on to replace them.
So the bottom line is, we are, I think, even more than cautiously optimistic. I think we're optimistic about
I'm
this
extremely
year's. Yeah, I mean, I
optimistic.
really, I hate to sound. It's exciting to have this, especially for teachers. I'm really the raise that the district is looking to do for teachers and staff and all sorts
It's
of across the board.
exciting.
It's really
Yeah.
exciting, and it's a nice positive story in the world right now.
Have really high quality teachers, high quality education. We want to maintain all of the gains and keep gaining in the ways that we have over the last 20 years are incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit of a demographics nerd, so if you don't mind, because
Yeah.
we're talking about decreasing.
We know they're coming back.
That's right, they're coming back. Because if you follow the national news, the projections are really, and people can't see me, but my hand is going down, that, the school age population is projected to
shrinking.
continue
Mhm.
to decrease
Nationally. Yep.
nationally. That's affecting colleges are closing.
Sure.
There's changes nationally, but the trend in South Carolina is one of the states that is continuing
To grow.
to grow. And while we are predicting a drop again in our student population for FY27, it's going to start coming back
Rebounding.
up after that. So this is all based on birth rates. And, to me, it's very interesting.
I also nerded out about the demographics report that was issued a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago. Yeah, that would actually be another
So there was
interesting
a
podcast.
big bump if you think about the
It's a fascinating metaphor.
of babies that were born before the 08-09
Yeah.
recession.
Yep.
And that group, that big bump, that was
They've been working through the system.
There were huge classes in elementary, then middle, then high.
Yep.
That last group has graduated out. Now we've got a smaller group of kindergartners
Yep.
post-COVID
And they're going to
that
move
are
through
replacing them. And they're going to be moved through, but there are bigger groups
behind them.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that's important to think about as we kind of wrap up is, all of this is sort of subject to change too, right? Like if anything new comes, if any curveballs come out from Columbia in the next couple of weeks before they finish session, there's a expansion of paid parental leave that's still moving through,
Mm-hmm.
which would have a pretty significant impact if it were to pass.
Because it would be an unfunded
It would probably,
mandate.
given how things tend to work down there, it would be an unfunded mandate. So I think that's another thing that we just want listeners to be aware of. And this is why I really encourage folks to just pay attention. But
yes, and you talked about the timing earlier, and that is an issue, is that we have to plan our budget before Columbia has finalized their budget. So we're still, going on projected what we think the state is going to do. We monitor that very, very, very closely. I don't know if you've had Julie Horton on your podcast before, but so that's what she does. And not just her, but we follow that very closely, and their budget will be finalized hopefully in time for us to finalize
ours. Yeah, it is an inexact science, but all in service to putting the best possible resources in the buildings to teach the students and to support those kiddos, and then to support the educators.
What a great way to put it. Thank
you.
you.
Well, it's true. I'm as everyone who listens to this podcast knows, there's so much good happening every single day in the buildings in Greenville County Schools and in public schools across South Carolina. So, Nancy, thank you.
Thank you
for
Catherine.
joining us, and thank you for
fun.
for talking about this. And I'll just encourage listeners to keep paying attention and stay involved.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast and helping our community understand these complicated issues.
They are complicated. It is our absolute pleasure. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.
Simple Civics EdTalks is a joint project of Greater Good Greenville, Greenville First Steps, and public education partners Greenville County.
Hi, Simple Civics Greenville County listeners, Nathaniel here. If you've made it this far, then we think you'll really love our newsletter. Sign up for bonus content, updates, and more right in your inbox. Look for the link in the description that says newsletter to sign up, or visit us at simplecivicgreenvillecounty.org. Find the link in the menu that says newsletter and sign up there. We'll see you again next week.